What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy. Welcome to my vlog. And so last week I talked about, the tax bill and kind of that law change. This time around, I guess I'll be talking about another law, proposed law change. So I realize this has already made the rounds of the internet probably 1,000 times over, especially if you could consider the conversation about it a couple of years ago, but I thought I would put in my 2 cents when it comes to the idea of net neutrality. Now, for those of you who do not know what net neutrality is, it is essentially the idea that internet providers cannot discriminate between websites and data that flow through their servers or whatever. So what this means basically is that internet providers can't block or intentionally slow down or make any similar changes to any given website. Essentially, because of net neutrality, the big websites don't get treated any differently by internet providers than the really small websites. So, for example, if you want to start a band and make a web page for that band, there's little stopping you from doing so. And it will get out there as long as people spread the word and there is attention brought to it. The internet provider can't suddenly say, no, we're not gonna give people access to your band's website. But honestly, when it comes to this conversation, I've actually heard some views on both sides of it. Some people saying, get rid of net neutrality. Some people saying, keep it. Really, I've heard a lot more people saying keep it. But the people who I've heard say, get rid of net neutrality, really a lot of it comes down to the finance, business, competition end of things. For example, they'll say that we're essentially the people that don't use Netflix because of the way that you pay for internet, and you just kind of pay for everything all at once, and like you pay for bandwidth basically rather than certain sites. The people who don't use Netflix are then sort of subsidizing the people who do, because all the internet's treated the same and you're all paying for all of it anyway. But because Netflix uses up so much more of the general bandwidth and just internet traffic, people who don't use Netflix are somehow kind of subsidizing the Netflix users. Okay, I'm not going to go all, well then why does Netflix have a subscription service? Because it says subsidized, not that we're like completely giving it to them for free. I say we because I personally don't have a Netflix account. But really, what's more my concern with all this is not the money and the financial aspect of things. But let me just offer a slight and direct refutation to the claims related to the business money aspect of things. Okay, yes, it might be true that people are sort of subsidizing Netflix users or something like that. But on the whole, when it comes to the cost of internet usage and just ability to spread it and competition and things like that, first off, I would just say that has very little to do with the actual idea of net neutrality. It may have been passed as some sort of subsection of the bill, law, whatever, that went into effect along with net neutrality. But for that, I would say you could just make an amendment to that, not get rid of net neutrality, but get rid of whatever other government restrictions or guidelines or anything like that there might be going along with it. or modify them or something. You can change the business end of it without necessarily getting rid of net neutrality. Like, I've heard a lot of people that are anti-net neutrality saying that, well, because of government regulations, you can't put good broadband internet in, like, certain locations or something like that. And first off, I think that's probably an oversimplification. Secondly, back to the point I just made, there's got to be a way to change that aspect of it without getting rid of net neutrality. But also, in terms of the idea that getting rid of net neutrality would increase competition or something like that, I wouldn't count on it, especially in our greedy capitalistic, really not even pure capitalistic, but our greedy business world as it is in the US here, because take TV packages, for example. Most people, really in some slight way, are not satisfied with their television service. And a lot of it has to do with the idea that most people think they're paying at least a little too much for it. Or that, given the amount that they're paying, they don't have as many channels as they feel like they should have. I mean, heck, you just want to get NFL Sunday Ticket or something like that. I think that on its own is like $50 or even $100 a month, which is kind of ridiculous. And so you've got things like that in television, which, by the way, does not have, there's no, like, television neutrality law or anything like that, to the best of my knowledge. So, I'm just saying, if television hasn't turned out that way where businesses are essentially competing to provide the best service, and there's, you know, like, all sorts of different channels available at little cost. If that doesn't happen with television, then why do you think it would happen with internet access? Doesn't make sense to me. These are greedy businesses. They don't care about how much access we have. All they care about is getting every single nickel and dime that they can out of other people so that they can grow their business. Or that the president or owner or whoever can make more money. That would kind of be my rebuttal to the idea that getting rid of net neutrality would promote business competition and things like that. And then when it comes to arguments really specifically for keeping net neutrality, as I mentioned earlier, if we get rid of net neutrality, there's nothing saying that your little website that you want to start up to promote your band is actually going to get viewed by anybody. Because, now granted, I'm not saying this would happen, but getting rid of net neutrality opens up the possibility of internet providers either not allowing access or very much throttling the speeds of, or something. It's discriminating against certain websites. And so you're essentially giving internet providers content control, which has not happened before within the US. Now, I'm not saying for sure that they would start limiting access to sites and different things like that. But, like I said, getting rid of net neutrality opens up that possibility. And that scares me, because you essentially have freedom of speech, freedom of the press, all sorts of different media involvement wrapped up in this simultaneously. I just don't really see what good would come out of getting rid of net neutrality. I realize there are I realize that there are countries that don't necessarily have a net neutrality law in place, but they still have, good internet with basically unlimited access and that kind of stuff. And you know what? Good on them. I do not trust our government, economic, business world. And yes, I include those all wrapped up in one because there are all sorts of businesses that are tied into the political world. So, I really don't trust our government and our businesses to just say, no, we're gonna keep giving you unlimited internet access. You can still access whatever websites you want. We're not gonna change anything. I wouldn't count on it. I feel like it's probably going to go more so the way that TV is these days, which hardly anybody is fully satisfied with. Really, one of the things that I feel like very few people have mentioned or considered when talking about net neutrality and whether or not to keep it, how exactly are the internet providers going to regulate stuff? How are they going to decide which websites you have access to or which ones that get higher or lower speeds or anything like that? Technically speaking, even within, let's say, YouTube, there are millions, if not billions, of websites literally wrapped up just within YouTube. So if internet providers are going to start giving out packages of, okay, you have access to these 200 websites, then technically realistically what it would probably be is, you're going to have access to these 200, I'd almost call them domains, because my guess is they'd say, okay, you have access within this package to youtube.com/whatever. You have access to google.com/whatever. And so on and so forth. Same thing with like Facebook or Twitter maybe, or anything like that. And so that's probably what would happen, but it's just with the constant influx and creation of new websites and content currently, how in the world do you regulate all that kind of stuff? And I don't know. I think it's kind of a ridiculous prospect, and it would almost be more work on their end. So maybe that's one reason to think getting rid of net neutrality wouldn't get rid of unlimited internet access, because it would just be too much to keep track of. But that assumes people would keep creating new websites and such, which it may slow down significantly, if not come to an end, just because of getting rid of net neutrality and businesses kind of pushing certain websites or packages or whatever. Because if you've got a website that you've created that either isn't included in their package, or they, decide to massively reduce the speed of, or something like that, nobody's going to want to visit a slow website. Nobody's going to be able to visit a website if they don't have access to it. But then I think really the most important piece of why we want to keep net neutrality is because, as I mentioned earlier, how much our government has ties to the business world. And really, with just how messed up, corrupt, all that kind of stuff our political and business world is, or the mashup of that within the U.S., I feel like there's nothing that would then stop the businesses, or really kind of people within the political realm, there's nothing stopping them from going to the businesses that they kind of have ties to and saying, look, I don't want you providing access to these major websites because, they said something bad about me, or because, they're against my political party, or something like that. There's very little to stop that kind of thing. It would give greater potential for the government to start controlling content. And then that just opens up so many other cans of worms, because we could potentially start heading into where, like, all media is just biased in one particular way. You could start essentially having people get brainwashed in a sense. Not completely brainwashed, but like, it just, propaganda could be so much more of an influence for a certain political party or candidate or something like that, because of the business and political ties. And basically politicians would then be able to say to the businesses that are tied to them that they want to remove access to certain websites. And that scares the heck out of me, because that kind of thing is what could have us heading the way of, say 1920s, 30s Germany. That could essentially have us headed the way of modern day North Korea, where there's literally nothing within the media that goes against, their leaders and the people, just overall people in power and their system. So if you want to open up the possibility of that happening within the United States, then get rid of net neutrality. But if you don't, please, for the love of everything on the internet, do not get rid of net neutrality. That's going to do it for this time around, I think. As always, like and share if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to my channel, click the bell, check the notification box, then you'll get updates on all the stuff that I post to YouTube. You could also follow me on Facebook and Twitter, or check out my Instagram. Information on all that is going to be down in the description. Leave comments down below with your thoughts on this video, if I missed something big, or if you have something else you would like to add to the conversation, or if you have other ideas for things I could talk about, types of videos I could do. Leave all that down below in the comments section. So I think that's going to do it for me, and that's it for all the different ways to keep up and interact with me in my videos. So, I hope you're all doing well, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Stay cool, people.